Today we're going to do a tutorial on some really basic 3D viewer control options to help you keep control of what you're doing in the viewfinder, because the 3D viewer, because it can be frustrating sometimes. First off, in case you don't know how to start a new project, you open up Blender. You're going to probably see this. This is a basic default project, but if you want to start a new one, Command N. Select General. That's going to basically, I'm not going to save this. I'm opening a new project. It looks the same, but this is a new one. Now, this is all the default options that we're going to be given in a project. Right now, this is, if I was to press 0 on the numeric keypad, I enter camera view. So this is where the camera is focused. This is the view the camera sees. If I press the numeric key 0 again, I come out of camera mode, and you can see here's my camera right here. If I was going to move the camera, pressing G, moving it along the x-axis, now I'm going to press 0 again. Now we can see we've moved the camera to this position, and that's what it basically, and this is what the camera is seeing is in here. So that's the camera view. But if we come out of camera view, I'm going to press Command Z to undo that move. It doesn't matter. That's not important. Right now, this is our whole scene. There are 3 objects in this scene. This is the object list over here. We have a light, we have a cube, we have a camera. If I were to press the home key, now I'm on a Mac, so this is all going to be Mac based, but I'm pretty sure this is all Mac based. Home is going to center all of the objects basically that are in the scene centered. And the way I'm showing how this can change, I'm going to move this camera again. I'm going to move it, let's say, along the y-axis over to here. And if I press home again, it's going to center it out. So now everything's seen. It basically centers everything so you can see what's there and what's not. So now, conversely, if I want to, let's say I want to focus on this object, the cube, I can select it, and I'm using left click select. If you're on 2.79, it's right mouse select, or you can use that option in 2.80. But I'm using left click, so I'm clicking left. In fact, you know what? I'm going to actually turn on my screencast. Let's turn that on so we can see what I'm doing. So here's the commands I'm doing. So left mouse click, I've selected that object. Now, if I press the period on the numeric keypad, numpad, it zooms right in. It fills the screen with that. Okay? If I was to press home again, it's going to center everything again. So I can come back out and see everything if I'm confused. Let's suppose this is a light I've selected, but it's not an object, not particularly but I can select that, and I can press the numeric keypad and zoom in on that. I can press the numeric keypad, zoom in on that. Home brings me back out so I can see everything. This is the 3D cursor. If I press Shift and then I right click, that's going to move the 3D cursor around. And basically there's reasons for that, but if I wanted to create a new object, and I wanted it to be right here, wherever the 3D cursor is, that's where a new object is going to be placed when you create it. So right now, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to create, let's say, a UV sphere. There it is. Was created where the 3D cursor was. If I was to put the 3D cursor over here, Shift A, I'm going to let's add another mesh. Let's add a cylinder. Boom. So we can see where these things are going, where the 3D cursor is. Now, let's suppose I want to move the 3D cursor now to the center of the world, so that it's generally speaking, it's a good idea to create things at the center of the world, because everything is kind of calculated from where it is originally created in Blender. So if I press Shift C, the 3D cursor has now moved to the center of the world, which is, you can see the 2 axes right here indicating the center, but the cube is right where the center was. So that's why it's there. Now, home, it's centering everything. It didn't really move because it didn't need to. It's widened out. If I was to select the cube or the cylinder, zoom in, okay, it's focused on that. Home again, shows everything. Now, the X, to delete things, we just press X. So I've selected this cylinder, I'm sorry, the sphere, X. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to go over here and I'm left clicking to select things. I'm going to delete the cylinder. And now I'm going to zoom into this. So now let's get into controlling the view. When you're just rotate, I may want to let's say here's my scene. I want to rotate the scene, like rotate around and see things. If I press my middle mouse, that's how I rotate. I press and hold, and I'm moving, like I'm using a mouse with a little ball that I move with my thumb. So that's how I rotate. Okay, but I'm holding the middle mouse. If I hold Option when I do that, it's going to click in increments on axes. Okay, so that's keeping control there. Let's go back to the camera. Let's come back out of camera. Let's press 1. 1 puts me in front view on the numeric keypad. Might be easier to show this if I delete the cube. I'm going to add a plane. So the plane is here, but it's on that plane. It's running along the X and Y axes. So if I press 1, it's hard to see it because we're looking directly at it. Let's suppose I want to see it. I don't want to rotate it though. I just want to see from above. If I press 7 on the numeric keypad, now I'm looking down at it. I'm going to press period on the numeric keypad. Boom, I've zoomed in on that. So there it is. Now if I want to click on the right mouse, I'm sorry, on the middle mouse button, now I'm rotating around that object, okay? So that's how we rotate our view. I'm going to go back to 1, which is our front view. I want to delete this plane, and now I'm going to add a cube so we can just see it. There we go. So we're back to having a cube. And now what I just did there is I scrolled my mouse button. That's how I zoom. That's one way to zoom, but I'm scrolling in and out. Okay? Another way to zoom would be to press Control, middle mouse button, and now I'm rolling it in and out. And you'll see that it's zooming in on notice how it's following my mouse pretty much, because under Preferences, let's go to Preferences by pressing Command, comma, brings up my preference window. In navigation, I have selected right here, zoom to mouse position. If I deselect that, close this window, and now when I press and hold Control, middle mouse, it's going to basically zoom to the center of the screen. Okay? So to rotate, middle mouse, and just rotate around, drag the mouse to rotate accordingly. Holding the Control button, middle mouse will zoom. In this case, it's just going to basically zoom to the center of this generally in the screen, unless Command, comma, I've selected zoom to mouse position, which is what I pretty much like to do. Now, when let's say the mouse is over here, I want to zoom here. I'm zooming. So I'm zooming pretty much where the mouse is at. The other option would be to pan the view. If I hold Shift, middle mouse, now I'm panning. Okay? Up and down, left and right. So that's panning. And by the way, there's 2 views. On the numeric keypad, if I press 5, it takes me out of, let's press 1. First off, we're in front view. If I press 1, orthographic view, if I press 5 now that I'm in the front view, you see how it changes? It becomes more of we see the perspective. If I press 5 again on the numeric keypad, it toggles back to kind of the same view, but it's not giving you that 3D vibe. It's not truly doing 3D. So 5 toggles between having a, pretty much really kind of getting a sense of perspective, orthographic, and 5 again toggles to just I can't think of the word for it. I'm only a blue belt. Now I'm going to press 5 again, go back to this view here. I'm going to press 1 on the numeric keypad. I'm looking head on. Now let's say rotating an object. We're going to move on to that now. If I want to rotate this object, the command to rotate is R, And look what happens. Oh, I'm rotating. It's pretty much rotating. I want to know, I don't know, why is it rotating while I'm looking right at it? Well, I want to have control of how it's rotating. And the way I do that, by the way, Option R will reset whatever rotation I've done if I don't like how I've changed things. The Z-axis is this blue line. I want to rotate this cube on the Z-axis, so I'll press R, Z. Now I'm rotating on the Z-axis. Okay? By the way, I don't like that. Center back in, so RZ, rotating on that axis. Okay? Option R resets. If I RX, we see that line has just appeared showing it what axis it's going to be rotating on. So now I'm rotating on the X-axis. Okay, RX. I'm going to reset that, Option R. And now finally, RY rotates on the Y-axis, which is the yellow line coming towards the camera and away. So that's how we rotate. I'm going to Option R, reset the rotation. Now, let's scaling. You probably know this, but if I press S, now I can scale the whole object equally on every axis. If I were to scale and press Z, SZ, it's going to scale on the Z axis. Scale Y, it's going to scale on the Y axis. Scale X, it's on the X axis. To reset all the scaling I just did, if I don't like what I've done, Option S, it's resetting all the scaling. Option R, resetting all the rotation. Now to move things, G is the key we press to move things. Right now, it's just moving however I'm dragging my mouse. If I want control, first off, Option G resets the position. Now I'm going to press G, and let's say I'll select Y. I'm going to move along the Y-axis. Even if I'm doing it on the Y-axis, and I'll go, oh no, I wanted the X-axis, press X. It just goes right to X. It forgets what you were doing, and now I want to go on the Z-axis. Okay, it forgets what I was doing on the X-axis. Now it knows I want to move in the Z-axis. Boom, there I go. I've moved in the Z-axis. That's how I move things. Now let's go Option G to reset the movement. Now, if I want to rotate this, but it's like sometimes it's out of control. Like you'll get in a position where you're trying to rotate something, and it's frustrating because it's rotating too much. There's a few ways to control rotation. I'm going to select R, Z, so we're rotating on the Z. Now you see how fast that's rotating? I'm just dragging my mouse just a smidge, but you see I started with my mouse right over the object. Instead, I've selected the object. We know that's what I'm going to rotate. Let's move my mouse out over here and select R again, Z. Now, it takes a lot more to rotate. I have to move my mouse a lot more. I have much more control because it's kind of relative to the object, how close to the object my mouse starts to rotate. We're going to reset that rotation. And that's it. So I'm going to end this tutorial right there and say, it's kind of running on, but I hope that's helpful. Once again, Gavin, Blender Blue Belt, working to get my purple. Have a great one.